Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Dream Huge podcast, hosted by Mark Gray. What's up, Mark?
What's going on, Pete?
Nothing, man. Excited for this one. Excited, baby. Mark Gray slanging deals every day. How you doing, buddy?
Good man, good man. Just grinding it out one day at
Good.
a time.
Working home on a Sunday today. Love it.
Yes, sir.
We got what's that?
Said yes, sir.
Yeah, we got Justin Bigelow, the three-time champ, Biggie, and his son Aiden. What's going on, Biggie and Aiden?
What's going on?
Nothing, man. Working hard. Excited to talk some real estate and help some folks out with achieving financial freedom with our special guest today, Cale Delaney. How you doing, Cale?
I'm doing well, Pete. Thanks for having me on.
Good, man. Thanks for making the time on a Sunday. Appreciate you very much. Cale Delaney is a short-term rental expert, a seven-figure host, the podcast host of The Fit Investor. Interested in that title? That sounds good. That sounds fun. He specializes in optimizing and scaling short-term rentals for cash flow and financial freedom, and helping others find financial freedom through real estate investing. So, Cale, my man, tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said, short-term rentals, that's my business. That's my game. I got into the short-term rental space. Really, it's about almost 3 years ago at this point. I had started out in real estate, really initially with the thought of getting into long-term rentals. That was my original plan. And small multifamily, that was going to be my exit strategy from the W-2 world, right? Which that was my goal, and finding that financial and time freedom, like so many of us want. And I started out right in the midst of COVID, early 2020, and picked up my first long-term rental, which was a fourplex in a local market, and just quickly realized that it wasn't going to get me to where I wanted to be in the time period that I wanted. And so I had to pivot, and thankfully I stumbled upon short-term rentals through another podcast, actually, and the same market that I invest in, which is the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. And once I kind of heard that podcast, I took the entire family, packed in a minivan, drove 16 hours out to the Smoky Mountains, and met with some realtors, looked at some properties. 3 weeks later, we were under contract on our first cabin. And wow. Fast forward, within 18 months or so, we picked up about 7 cabins out in that area, and are continuing to scale and grow our business out there, as well as some more properties down in Florida. So that's what we do now. We own and operate all our properties. We're also beginning to co-host properties for other people and offer consulting and coaching in the STR space, as well as doing the podcast that you mentioned. So that's what we're up to.
Awesome. So where do you live currently?
South Florida.
Okay, South Florida. So where was the original 4-unit you purchased?
So that was locally here in South Florida, just about 20 minutes or so from where I am. A quirky little beach town.
Yeah. So what's the name of the town?
Lake Worth Beach.
Okay. So, and South Florida, is that like Miami area or?
So we're in Palm Beach County. So if you're familiar, Palm Beach Island, I'm sure you've heard of that. It's about 15, 20 minutes just south of Palm Beach Island.
Okay. And your fourplex, how did you purchase that?
It was just a conventional deal. Found it on the MLS. Funny enough, actually, I had made an offer on this property and the seller turned it down initially. And I circled back, I think it was maybe about 2 months later, sent them the same offer, which was about 20% below list. And they accepted it that time. Wow. And so got that property and we got it up and running. We turned over all the tenants. And I mean, for a long-term rental, it was performing well. Within 6 months, I'd actually doubled the NOI on it after we turned over all the tenants, raised the rents, cut some expenses and all that stuff. But still, it just, again, based on the goals and the time that I had, it wasn't going to get me to where I wanted to. And we eventually did actually convert one of those units out of the 4 into a short-term rental, which that one unit is making more than all 4 units used to make. That's a long term. So, just goes to show the power.
So you doubled the NOI initially, and now you probably tripled or quadrupled it
Yeah.
by doing that.
Yep.
Awesome stuff right there. So once you reached out to the Smoky Mountains, you said, correct?
Yep. Yep.
So, and you found a cabin there. And so the thought when you purchased the cabin, that was a short-term rental all the way because you had learned about that from a podcast, correct?
Correct. Yep.
So what was that purchase conventional financing, 20% down as well?
So that one it was conventional, but it was purchased as a second home, which
Yep.
is a common technique for, especially for short-term rentals and vacation rentals. In a new market, assuming you meet some certain qualifications that you need to confirm with the lender, you can typically get a property for or as a second home, which means you can get in with 10% down.
Nice. So you were able to purchase that 10% down, and that allowed you to also use that as a short-term rental.
Correct.
So I know the short-term rentals in our area, at least. I, as a good rule of thumb, I like to tell folks they can double the market rate rents. If you're normally getting $1,000 a month, you could easily get $2,000 a month running it as a short-term rental. Would you agree with that, or do you see more than that, or what do you think on that one?
Yeah, I think that's a good baseline. And it all depends on the market too. Like, for example, the Smoky Mountains, it's kind of hard to give a metric like that because there's really not a strong long-term rental market out there. It's a pure tourism market. And so you really
Right.
don't have much to compare it to. But for example, like that fourplex that I was talking about where we converted one of the units, that unit was renting as a long-term rental at $1,400 a month. And now it averages about $5,000 a month. So, I mean, I used to say you should easily be able to 2 to 3x what your income was as a long-term rental. I will say that the market dynamics are changing a bit now. So, things are getting a little tougher to perform like they were over the past couple of years. So I don't want to lead anybody astray, but I think, saying 2x is still a pretty safe estimate.
Are those how many people are those cabins sleeping on average?
So we have a whole variety. We have everything from studios up to a 4,000 square foot 6-bedroom.
Wow.
So the studios typically sleep 4. The 6-bedroom we allow up to 16, and then we have everything in between as well.
So the studio that sleeps 4, what are you getting on that per night?
Again, based on seasonality, it'll range anywhere from low season, maybe around $100 a night, to peak or holidays, you might even be able to get, 500, 600, 700 a night.
And your largest cabin that sleeps the most, how much is that getting in the peak season per night? The most amount.
Yeah, the most is going to be your holidays, and that'll fetch usually probably around 1,800 a night.
1,800 a
Oh,
night,
man.
folks. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. Hey, what's your total portfolio worth?
It is right now. It's around just under 7 million.
$7 million, folks. 3 years. 3 years in, Cale Delaney, and he's already accumulated $7 million worth of properties. Man, that's awesome, Cale. Love it.
Yeah, thank you.
How hard is it managing short-term rentals from states away? How difficult is that?
It can be as easy or as difficult as you make it, right? So there are tools out there to make it relatively simple, and I say 90% automated, meaning your messaging with your guests, you can set up automatic messaging. All the coordination with your cleaners, that's going to be all coordinated automatically through your PMS, your property management software. Your pricing software, dynamic pricing software, once you get that set up and tuned in, that's going to adjust your pricing on a daily basis automatically based on your settings. So, again, I'd say 90% is automated once you get really just the basic softwares set up. The other 10% is going to be you stepping in to deal, when there's an issue or a guest has a question or you have to coordinate with some maintenance and things like that. But once you get those systems in place, it's really not that bad. It is a bit of a bear on the front end, to get things set up and to learn how things go. And there's certainly a learning curve, especially when it comes to the guest communications and the actual hospitality side of it, right?
Yeah.
And how you deal with certain issues and all that stuff. But yeah, it's. I mean, for me, again, I have 8 short-term rentals that I manage, and I do it myself still. 7 are in the Smokies, 1 is here locally in Florida. Realistically, if I wanted to, just as running it as a bare bones operation, I could easily spend less than an hour a day. I do spend more time than that because at this point, now that real estate's my full time, there's a lot of kind of different avenues you can go down in terms of optimization when it comes to marketing and getting direct bookings set up and all these other different avenues. So those are some things I'm kind of working on at this point. But yeah, like I said, as bare bones operation, it's really not much at all.
Mm-hmm. What was your W-2?
So I worked as a senior project manager for a large contractor for about 15 years, and did work primarily in South Florida, but kind of all over the country, a bit here and there as well.
Do you miss that every day?
Not a day. Not a day.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Hey, going back to the systems and stuff, do you offer like a same day turnover? Like if you're what time is your checkout and what time is the check in? And do you offer that same day? And what types of headaches can that cause?
Yes, we do. So checkout is 10 a.m. Check-in is 4 p.m. And we do allow same day bookings. So, I mean, usually it's pretty seamless. The only challenge really is when you do get a very last minute booking and the cleaners perhaps, if let's say you had a couple days gap and the cleaners perhaps did not have it scheduled to clean that day because they knew it was open. And then, they might have to scramble to try to get there by 4 p.m. and get the cleaning done, which it has happened a couple times, but we always try to have our cleaners, even if there is a gap, understand that since we do allow same day bookings, still scheduled to be cleaned on the same day as a checkout, no matter what. So that's kind of the biggest headache that can come up. And of course, if something does happen, like I'll just give you a quick example. It seems like there's one storm in the Smoky Mountains every year that just causes havoc. And it's usually right around the worst time, which is Christmas and New Year's. And so this last year was like, they called it the snowpocalypse because it really doesn't snow there much. You get maybe a tiny bit of snow when it goes away, but even if there's an inch of snow, it's like the world ends out there. There's no infrastructure for snow removal. It's kind of funny at the same time. Yeah.
Rains in California.
Yeah. So, I mean, that we had this bad storm, temperatures were super low. Pipes were frozen everywhere. Power was out everywhere. Wow. And thankfully I only had one cabin that lost water, and everything else stayed with power, which was great. However, when the pipes, came back, power came back, everything kind of thawed out and people were coming back. This was right around New Year's. We had a turn that same day and our cleaners went to turn on the hose spigot and to fill up the hot tub, because we drain and clean our hot tubs every single clean. And I get a message it was around 1 p.m. with a video showing about 2 inches of water all over the entire bottom floor.
Oh,
oh man.
Of course, a guest is on the way. Long story short, I was able to call the plumber, get somebody out there within an hour, call a water mitigation company. They got out there within an hour, sucked up all the water, put in some fans, cut off that water line that was leaking, and the guests came. And, we had some fans in there overnight to dry things out, but overall we got it taken care of. But it can just, of course, lead to, those kind of fast-paced headaches that you gotta mitigate quick.
What did that guest think?
They were understanding that nobody, it wasn't something our fault. It happened. They knew there was this storm. They were, I'll be frank, they were a little annoyed about the fans overnight because there was a bedroom down on that floor. But the fans were gone after one night and, they were back to normal. And so overall it worked out and they still had a good stay. So.
That's good.
Yeah.
Have you installed 7 generators since then?
No. No, I mean, it's the power is one thing, which it is a pain and you just got to kind of deal with it. But, the water, that was the thing that really wreaked havoc everywhere. I mean, again, thank God that was the worst that we had, but there were so many people where they just had pipes bursting left and right. And it was just it was a mess. So
how important is it to be, you had a question about the resident there, the guest.
Mhm.
and keeping them happy. How important is it to get those good reviews?
Mm.
And how much power does the guest have over reviewing us versus the host reviewing the guest? Tell me about that dynamic.
Oh boy, open up the can of worms. So, look, it's a bit of a broken system, and there's really not a whole lot that you can do about it. The guest probably does have the advantage when it comes to the reviews, and lots of them know that, and lots, I shouldn't say lots, some will use that against you, certainly, or try to. Now, Airbnb, I will say, has been trying to make some efforts on mitigating that a little bit, because they started getting all the complaints, and they understand that a guest has a bad something, whatever, something may happen, or the guest just might not be a great guest, and they threaten, hey, I'll leave you a bad review if you don't refund me, right? That was kind of the big thing that happens.
Yeah.
And so Airbnb thankfully recognized that, and they have a policy now where if you can prove or show that it was a retaliatory situation, then they'll remove it. It's not black and white, it's not clean cut, it's still a hit or miss type thing, but at least there's some type of improvement upon it. But overall, it's still a bit of a challenge for sure. And hosts, I mean, we certainly do look at the reviews. At least most hosts do. The thing is that most hosts also allow instant bookings, though, which means that you're not looking or vetting anything beyond what Airbnb or Vrbo or whatever platform vets initially. So you can get an instant booking from somebody that maybe has 1-star reviews. And, at that point, you're kind of like, well, what am I going to do about it?
You're stuck.
And you
Yeah.
can't cancel it either.
You have the ability to cancel, I believe it's one penalty-free instant booking with Airbnb. But yeah, beyond that, if you cancel bookings, that's a big no-no. You get put in the penalty box. You even get charged a fee from Airbnb for canceling a booking.
So they fee you for canceling, and then when you said they put you in the penalty box, do they delist you or temporarily, or what do they do?
No, they won't delist you as a first offense, if you want to call it that. Eventually they would, but basically it'll just impact you and their algorithm and their search ratings. So you're going to drop down in the rankings pretty heavily. You can also lose what they call their superhost status, which has some various benefits, but one of them is supposedly helping you out in the rankings as well. So it's canceling as a host is one of the last things you ever want to do, because that can really have a negative effect on you. And that's one of the reasons that in the industry, especially over the past, say 6 months to a year, direct bookings are becoming more and more of the push, just because it gives you a little bit more control, and it gives you a little bit more money as well. You're not having to pay all those fees with these platforms, and you're just able to vet people better if you want, or have a little bit more control over the review situations and all that type of stuff. So
when you say direct bookings, you mean like directly through your own personal website?
Correct. Yep.
Nice. So you've got that all built up. I mean, that was probably something that you didn't have from day one, but you maybe start with Airbnb, VRBO, build up a client base, and then add that website in later, or how did that look?
Yeah, exactly. Excuse me, exactly. That's the way it was for me. But anybody new or getting started at this point, I would highly recommend you do that from the very beginning. It's the market now has shifted. It's not as easy as things were over the past couple of years. So you really need to not only be more active in the management and be more strategic, but you really need to have that direct booking platform as well, to start driving business to you. And the other thing that really, as an example of why it's so important, is that, when COVID initially hit, Airbnb, Vrbo automatically canceled all the bookings. Now, thankfully, after a few months when things opened up, the floodgates opened and it all worked out for a lot of people. But still, those platforms have that power, right? If something happens, they can cancel and you have no recourse. So if you have a direct booking platform, you are the one in control.
Yeah, you want to have all the control you can have. I love that.
Yeah.
So with the direct booking, that's essentially no different than running like your own rental.
Yep. Yeah, it's like you'll have your own website, and the good thing now too is it's really easy if you just want to, again, kind of bare bones direct booking. Most of the PMS or property management softwares now actually offer as part of their platform or their website package a direct booking website that they'll automatically create for you.
Oh, okay.
It's not going to be super spiffy. It's not going to be geared for SEO with Google or all that stuff, but it'll at least allow you to do it. If you're looking to really have something that's, fine tuned and looking good and, in touch with the algorithms with Google, and there's several companies out there. I work with one called Boostly, which is one of the leaders out there when it comes to direct booking sites and everything. But yeah, there's lots of options out there now.
And so does that have to be set up like with all the fees, like booking through Airbnb? Does it go through that whole setup, or
Yeah.
how does that work?
So it depends on how you have it built or what site or everything you use, but typically they're going to integrate somehow with your, your pricing software or with your PMS. And that's where all the data, pricing, taxes, fees, all that stuff is going to be really within those various softwares. And so it just needs to integrate with that, and it'll pull all that information and keep it updated.
Aiden had a question. What's your question?
How many properties do you have?
So I have, I guess, 13 doors. Everybody likes to say doors, but 8 of them are short-term rentals.
Nice.
Yeah, and you're right. It's not always about the doors,
Right.
the number of doors. It's about how much juice can you squeeze out of those doors, right?
Exactly.
If you're managing them to the fullest potential, squeezing the most juice you can out of that orange, man, and just managing those to the maximum potential. That's the way to do it. And I need to do a better job on that. I can tell you 100%. I got a bunch of doors, but they're not making me nearly that kind of money. If I took your ratio and put it on my portfolio, man, we could really knock it down. But it's a little different. My setup is not in a resort area. Not that you have to be.
Right.
We have people having great luck, like Mark Gray right here, with short-term rentals in non-resort areas, because we still have a shortage of housing everywhere you go, and along with that, we still have a shortage of furnished housing everywhere you go. So Mark has found a niche in that as well.
Yeah.
Have you seen restrictions? I mean, you are already a resort-based town. So in some of these bigger cities, they're starting to put restrictions on short-term rentals because of the high turnover,
Right.
the partying, the high traffic. Are you seeing that in Smoky Mountains?
Not in the Smoky Mountains, and that's one of the reasons I chose the Smoky Mountains, and which it's what I would call a tier 1 vacation rental market, meaning it's super established. I mean, they've been doing vacation rentals there since the 50s and 60s. I mean, it is a pure tourism town. The likelihood of any type of regulation shutting down vacation rentals is next to nothing, because those towns, Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, would disappear. So
they would actually do more of it, if anything.
Right. But even within that area, you still have to check, because there are some zonings that will not allow it. There are some HOAs that will not allow it. So you just got to make sure you're in the right area, and no matter where you go, even in those type of tier 1 vacation rental markets. But regulation is always a concern. I mean, in that market where I have that fourplex, which one of the units is a short-term rental, there was some recent legislation that was trying to get passed to not necessarily do anything drastic at the moment, but basically giving the ability for the county to take action should they want. And there's a big movement, thankfully, with short-term rental hosts. A lot of people reached out to their senators and congressmen, myself included, and thankfully the bill was not passed, but it very well could. I know there's a bill floating around in California right now with some similar language. So it's important to keep up on that. And if you're not in one of these pure tourism towns, that's definitely a much bigger concern. And you just got to, make sure you do your due diligence on the front end. And, it's another reason why it's important to, even if you are doing short-term rentals or you start out in short-term rentals as a hobby, because, hey, there's certainly nothing wrong with that. Find a way to get some extra cash, but do it professionally, right? Because there are bad hosts out there, just like there are bad guests out there, right? And that's what can give a bad reputation to the short-term rental industry. And especially with the big boom that it's had over the past couple of years, a lot of people have gotten into the business, and a lot of people may not treat it that professionally, and that's where you get the partying and the things like that. And there's lots of things that you can do to help mitigate those things. For example, partying. Just, of course, Airbnb, Vrbo, those platforms, they're big against it. And if something does occur at your property and you notify them, they will take action and typically help to try to get the tenant out or the guest out. But there's things like noise monitors that you can install that will, automatically notify you and the guests.
I've seen those. And have you seen the smoke monitors too?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It can these new smoke monitors can determine, is it cigarette smoke, marijuana smoke, vapes?
Yep.
I swear.
Yeah.
Where do we get these?
So, I don't know if we do
Dark devices.
Yeah, there's a couple companies out there that offer these now, and they integrate typically now with all the various softwares, and some of them will actually reach out directly to the guest. It's usually a subscription service, but they'll actually, they'll call them and do it for you. So there's stuff like that you can do. And I think just setting the guidelines up front. When we have any like large groups, or especially if there's younger groups that are coming, we're just upfront with people. We say, look, these are the rules. If any rule is broken, if you are caught partying or anything like that, you're going to have to leave, and there's not going to be any refunds. And you do it in a nice manner, but you got to be frank and upfront. And that's what we find is probably one of the most critical things in hospitality. Not just with partying or anything like that. Is just be upfront with guests. If a challenge comes up, like I'll just tell you right now, we have power out at one cabin. There's a local power outage, and whatever. It'll probably be a few hours before the power comes back on. We have a guest coming in probably right now. And, we gave them a heads up. Hey, we just found out there's a local power outage. Usually these things are back up and running within a couple hours, unless it's something major. We'll keep you updated, as we get any updates. At least let them know. The last thing you want is they show up there's no power. Now they freak out. Now they're looking for what else is wrong here. That's the thing that you got to try to avoid. So whenever there is an issue or something's, happened, just be upfront, let the guests know, let them know what you're doing to try to, solve it for them. And typically that's going to mitigate 90% of the challenges or, upset guests that you get.
There you go. It's all about communications, baby.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. Hey, I want you to touch on, before we let you go, this has been great so far. Thank you, by the way. We're already up around 30 minutes. Can you touch on your podcast, The Fit Investor, how to be fit financially, physically, and faithfully? And then also, if you would, touch on Hospitable Hosts 2, the book you were featured in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We recently started a podcast, like you said. It's called The Fit Investor. And, we wanted to have a forum where we could talk about not just real estate or not just business, but also talk about, like we said, the physical fitness and faithful fitness. I am a Christian, and, my co-host as well. And so we wanted to create that open forum that we could talk about all these things and how they integrate, because I love talking about real estate. I love talking about business, but frankly, that's not all there is to life. And, if you want to live a more well-balanced life, you got to do well in some of these other areas as well. And they all kind of integrate. So that's kind of why we started it. It's had a pretty great reception so far, and, we're enjoying it and looking forward to it. So, and then the Hospitable Hosts 2, that book, thankfully we had the opportunity to be a part of that and be a featured author in the book, which was released just earlier this year. We actually had a big book launch event at a STR conference in Nashville, which was a lot of fun. And there's been book launch events for it all over the world, because it's actually about 40 short-term rental hosts from around the world sharing their stories of how they got started, why they got started. And it's a really inspiring read, an encouraging read for anybody who's looking to get into it or interested in it, because you just see all the different walks of life that everybody came from and how they did it. And to me, real estate and short-term rentals in specific, that's one of the best things about it, is that it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what means or what lack of means you come from. There are ways to get started and build yourself a life that you want and get that time and financial freedom. And so when you can see how so many other people did it, it just gives encouragement that, hey, maybe I can do it too.
Absolutely.
Cale was also featured on the Bigger Pockets Rookie podcast.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Bigger Pockets alum. Nice.
Yep.
Yeah, that's Mark's got the shirt on. We're huge Bigger Pockets fans.
Absolutely.
What episode is that? We'll have to check it out.
That is a good question. I should know that, right? It was a couple of years ago. That was when I was actually shortly after I'd got started. I had known I was acquaintance with Tony Robinson, who's the host now, and we were in some of the same circles and some of the same groups, and he was seeing, especially with how quickly I was getting these cabins and scaling the business. He was seeing that, and he invited me graciously to be on the show and share that. So I was still in my early stages there on that episode. So it's grown a bit since then, but it was great. It's funny, that was actually the first podcast I ever did.
Really?
So I was,
I
was a little nervous,
Jump right
but
into
it worked
it.
out well.
It's fun.
Yeah, your first one on Bigger Pockets. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Hey guys, final thoughts. Aiden, you have a question?
Yes.
Say it loud.
What was your motivation to start real estate?
Yes. Thank you. For me, so beyond just wanting to be, have the time and financial freedom, what really spurred me to pursue finally getting that is, so I have 3 children, but our youngest is 3 years old. And when he was born, that was kind of the thing that set it all in motion. That's when I really started thinking about the future, and that I couldn't continue working that job for the next 30, 40 years and maybe retire and really have nothing to show for it. I wanted to be able to have time to spend with him. And so that just started the wheels turning of how am I going to get out of this rat race? And from there, I stumbled upon, the real estate, the short-term rentals, and took a lot of action and took it quickly. But in a nutshell, it was the birth of my youngest son.
Yeah.
I love, mine was similar. It was nothing to do with kids, but more so just be connecting to family. And, that's what, just discover real estate. Like, this is like the key to freedom. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And that's, I love the real estate, and just, I know we're running on time, but just another thing I'll say is that, the real estate investor community is the only industry or community that I found where it is not a cutthroat type thing where people are just trying to hold you down so they can get ahead. I mean, it's one of the most sharing and encouraging communities out there. I mean,
why is that, do you think?
I think 2 things. One is, I think it because when people get into it and they see what is possible, they start to understand that there's more than enough for everybody, and you can get into that abundance mindset.
Yeah.
The other thing that I see as well, and I'm not going to generalize this, but it's just that the more and more I talk with a lot of investors and things like that, I do find that a lot of investors are Christians, and as a Christian, that's being generous and giving is one of the core tenets, and so I think that does play into that and integrate as well. But those are really the 2 things that I see.
Love it. Agree 100%. Yep. There's no shortage of success. This business is unlimited, and there's enough to go around for everybody. Yeah. And you're giving back to others and building up your communities and improving real estate along the way. So awesome stuff. And it all can be faith-based as well. Very cool. All right. Any final closing thoughts, anybody?
I just have to say, like you were mentioning earlier about how you have all those units, and he only has a few. It's all about improving the quality. Like me and Mark were just talking about quality over quantity.
Yeah.
just increase the quality of what you have and the quantity, you'll get more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, there's so many ways to skin a cat these days with real estate. So many options. Like there was just another one that I saw today in an email that came about that looks extremely interesting. And so there's just so many opportunities out there. So yeah, 100%. Anybody who has a portfolio, no matter what it looks like, start thinking about ways that you can optimize it. You know, there's so many different avenues, short-term, mid-term. I mean, rent by the room. I mean, there's just so many different ways to optimize and improve, cash flow.
Yeah, I like the one of our mottos is to never give up, and I'm always trying to be creative with trying to solve financial solutions to like get property, and so I'm always thinking like, man, there's the ways that I know, but what I don't know doesn't mean that it's over.
Right.
There's a way to do it. I know somehow, I just feel it that there's a way to get this done.
Right.
And it just keep thinking, keep putting the thought into it, and then eventually it shows itself. And one time I figured out it's the way I wasn't even thinking about it at all. But my mind was open to that information.
Right. Right. Yep. 100%. Yep.
Figure out a way. Love it. Hey, Cale, thank you for your time, buddy. Cale Delaney, where online can folks find you and or follow you?
Sure. Facebook, that's probably where I'm the most active. So I'm, very active in a lot of the, big short-term rental community groups and things like that. But you can just find me, Cale Delaney. Instagram, Cale_Delaney. And you can look up our podcast, The Fit Investor, on Apple, Spotify, all the major platforms. And and I'll be happy to chat with anyone.
Hey, what's your website for the cabins?
So it is mountain to sea cabins and cottages.co. And it's all spelled out.
Mountain to sea cabins and cottages.co.
Yep.
That's a long one. That was not taken.
I'll tell you this. My email is a super long one too. For some reason, I chose long stuff, and I regret it every day. So don't make that mistake.
You chose real estate, and that's long term.
Yes, go with short titles. That works better.
All right, Cale Delaney. Hey, man, thank you for your time. Thank you for hoping. Thank you for helping to inspire and motivate others here on the Dream Huge podcast. We have very similar podcasts. Ideas there. Not only do we talk real estate, but we hope to help motivate and inspire our listeners as well in all walks of life, in all industries. So thank you for bringing that on, though, and helping us out. And man, what great success in only 3 years. I can't wait to talk to you in another 3 years, because it's really going to start. As the snowball rolls down the hill, it gets bigger and bigger pretty quickly. Right. Man, you're really gonna scale up, and you're gonna do huge things, man.
Well, thank you. Awesome. I appreciate it.
Yep. All right, y'all. Well, thank you for watching the Dream Huge podcast, hosted by Mark Gray, slanging deals every day.
Yes, sir.
Aiden in the house with all the garbage in the back corner there. We're gonna get. What is all that? You moved in a couple years ago.
That's not mine.
Is that your mess, Aiden, or Justin's? That's Aiden's. Okay, all right.
That's none of my stuff.
And Cale,
that stuff.
well, okay. And Cale Delaney, thank you, man. Thank you for everything. Follow him on Instagram, Cale_Delaney, and everywhere else you can find him online. And as always, remember, like, subscribe, and share. And as always, remember the rules. Work hard, never give up, and dream huge. Let's see them guns. Come on, Fit Investor, man. Let's see them.
There we go. Boom.
Yeah. Have a great day, y'all.